So what you came today for is procurement for the long term, keys to success. This is going to be a conversation between FedEx and DATAMARK, and you're going to be blown away. We're talking about a 31-year-old relationship. 31 years old. So with us today, I have two leaders. First, I'm going to invite to have come on screen Herb Wells and Bill Randag. And Herb began his 40-year career at FedEx, and I love this, unloading planes on the night shift while working to complete his engineering degree at University of Memphis. I mean, Herb, right there, that line says a lot about who you are as a human being, and I love that story. You're now the director of U.S. Revenue Operations. And for people that don't know what that is, U.S. Revenue Operation is responsible for invoicing U.S. payers for services provided across the operating companies of FedEx Express, FedEx Ground, FedEx Freight, and FedEx Logistics. Herb also actively supports a number of nonprofit organizations and is passionate about literacy in the Mid-South. With him is Bill Randag, and Bill has served as the DATAMARK president since 2001, helping clients transform, improve, and add value to their business processes. But he joined the company back in 1993, and as his career progressed, he assumed increasingly complex responsibilities and leadership roles. He's proud to serve as a mentor at DATAMARK and beyond, helping to develop outstanding leaders in a multicultural communities that the company serves. As president, he's guided DATAMARK through a significant expansion into a broad-based portfolio of outsourcing business services, including bilingual English, Spanish contact center services, digital mailroom management, document processing, and a process improvement consulting for Fortune 500 companies. So first off, I want to welcome you two leaders. Incredible story that you're going to share with us today.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you're located.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It all works here. So I'm going to invite you to invite your colleagues to come on. And I know we have a number of them with us. I would love for us to get a quick glance into what their roles are. So the rest of you, come on. There we go.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you for that great introduction. From the FedEx side, I brought a number of people with me because, as you covered in the introduction, we do perform a shared service function across the operating companies, and it gets quite complicated sometimes. So I had to bring three experts with me. So I brought Adela, James, and Jerry. So I'll ask them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their role.
Hi, everyone. I am Adela Nazarova. I manage strategic revenue programs and vendor engagements at FedEx Services, and DATAMARK is one of the vendors I have been responsible for the past 4 years. So not 30, but 4. Congratulations.
So I'm James Whittington, and my team is operations, and we work with DATAMARK they support us on a lot of different functions. We get daily emails regarding their production and quality from the previous day's volume, and we have weekly and monthly meetings with DATAMARK to talk about any kind of concerns or trends we're seeing. So basically, my team relies on the vendors quite a lot.
Thanks, Dan. And my name is Jerry Kasecki. I'm in a similar role to James. I'm in the operation as well. DATAMARK supports, I think it's about 60 FTE worth of work in our area. Like James said, we're very much in line and collaborate on a daily and weekly basis. Unlike James, I've got to see the view of Adela's side. So I was in a role like hers a few years ago, which is, helps feed that front end process, to how the contracts are set up and the outsourcing is done in the first part. So excited to be here today.
Thank you. And Matt, you are a historian, I believe.
Yes, I am. So yes, my name is Matt Lockhausen. I'm Vice President here at DATAMARK, and I'm responsible for security and compliance for the organization. And I've been with the company for 31 years now, since basically the beginning of our relationship with FedEx. I've been heavily involved in it throughout the last 3 decades, and very happy to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to welcome all of you. And now, Bill, I don't mean to offend you, but we all know what Herb does. We know FedEx intimately, but not everyone in our audience knows DATAMARK. So do you mind indulging me with just a little bit about who DATAMARK is and what your 31-year relationship is like?
Absolutely. Glad to. I've only been here 28 years, so I brought Matt along because he's got a much better memory and he'll be able to give us a little insight into those other 3 years there. DATAMARK started in the late 1980s as a traditional BPO company. In fact, our first contract was with FedEx. We were processing manifests for them. So it started out with F&A processing with 26 people here in El Paso. Over time, that's expanded a lot from the traditional BPO realm. We still do a lot of F&A, but that's expanded into voice processing and other BPO functions. So today we have 3,000 employees across 3 countries, the US, Mexico, and India, and all that's in 11 sites. Today, call center represents about 50% of our business, and BPO, FAO represents the other 50%. Our focus over the years has really changed a lot, because in the beginning, we were just really focused on cost and quality. But over the last 30 years, we've really kind of changed our focus, and now we really focus on value. And what I mean by value is quality and cost competitiveness are really table stakes in the outsourcing industry. If you don't have both of those, you don't even get a seat at the table. But we don't think that's what the future is. We believe that the future of outsourcing and procurement and sourcing is really focused on value. And what I mean by value is going beyond just simply quality and cost, and being able to continuously deliver increased value to your customers. And we asked FedEx to join us because we thought that they're just a perfect example of what that actually looks like. And we're going to share a lot of stories with you of what that looks like. And delivering value really has to do with us caring about your business so much that we're continuously looking for ways for you to improve your business. That includes things that we touch, processes that we do, but we also look at upstream and downstream processes so that we can give you insight into other areas of your business to help you improve. And we've got several examples of that to share. But because we're a privately held company, it affords us the luxury of what I can maybe say as a short-term loss. I don't really look at it as a loss. I look at it as an investment. But what I mean by that is we often offer ideas and process improvements that the immediate impact is that we lose revenue, or that we lose profitability, or we lose functions that we perform. But the idea behind that is really so that we can demonstrate how we want to add value to the business. And over time, what that usually results in is that the people that see us as value, they look for other things for us to do. So what might look like a short-term loss, what it turns into is additional opportunities that we can facilitate across the various business units. And again, FedEx is a great example of this, because we started with 25, 26 people doing some accounting functions. And today we've got almost 1,000 across these 11 sites. Today we still do a lot of finance and accounting. We have accountants actually in sites that are performing specific back office functions and general ledger and cash management and that sort of stuff. But we've expanded to do a lot of call center stuff, voice processing, where we're helping shipments that get stuck at the border. We actually reach out to their customers and let them know their shipment's stuck and what can we do to help them facilitate that. Along with that, we do a lot of interpretation services. So today we have 20 languages that we're interpreting into English. Most of that is via just voice, but a lot of it's actually video, where we've got 3 people on video at the same time, the 2 people that we're interpreting for across the language platforms, along with our interpreter, so that they can see and help and walk people through it. And so the value that we're attempting to bring is to help drive continuous improvement into each of our customers, so that they see the value we bring and they ask us to bring that value across multiple business units.
It must be working. It has to be working, or you wouldn't be here 31 years later with her, would you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What we're hoping the takeaway is for all the sourcing guys is we hope to demonstrate for you how sourcing value can relate or turn into a long-term relationship.
Well, I hope that's a takeaway for everybody on this webinar Power Hour today. So Herb, I want to ask you though, because 31 years, your companies have forged this amazing relationship. And it's endured. It's endured through some troubling times. You've had not only a pandemic, we've had a recession, all kinds of things have happened during these 31 years. So what would you say it takes to make a great business relationship work, both short-term and long-term?
Yeah, I think we've already established the only person that's been here for the entire 31 years is Matt, right? So I've been in this area the last 20 years or so in the revenue operations area. And we have about, over the years, we've had as many as 10 different vendors that we've had relationships with, but DATAMARK is the vendor that we've had our longest relationship with, right? And I would say, so I have experience with DATAMARK and I have experience with other vendors. So it's not, I have kind of a broad view of all of that. So I would say one of the things that the business owner needs to do before they think about outsourcing is really do their homework. They need to understand the function that they own. I think everybody assumes they understand it, but you actually have to have that in writing. You have to have SOPs, you have to have training material, you have to have performance metrics. You have to review that information and that data even before you engage with a vendor, even a vendor as good as DATAMARK, right? You need to know what you have so you can kind of set the expectations. And then sometimes there are some functions that when you do your homework, you decide, wow, this particular function is outdated, and we might need to just discontinue it. And that has happened a few times too. But then when you engage with your provider, like a DATAMARK, you give them that information, your SOPs, your metrics. They do their homework, which I think is one of the areas that they excel in, is doing their homework. And I can recall one of your people, VJ. I'm sorry, VJ is not on the call today. When we were outsourcing a very large project, VJ was the project manager. And we actually sent them the materials ahead of time. And when he came to Memphis, where we're located, he had more questions about our training material than we did. I mean, he had found every gap in the process. But that kind of demonstrates the homework that they've done on their side before they assume the function. And then we work together on planning and launching. And, we have daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly meetings to make sure everything stays on track. So.
Okay, so Herb, what you're saying is this isn't just a vendor-buyer contract. It is really a relationship built on collaboration and mutual benefit. So can you share some of the differences and what makes this so collaborative? You mentioned weekly meetings. What else happens that makes it so collaborative between the two organizations?
Well, I think the key there is the weekly meetings, and they're at multiple levels. I mean, they're at the frontline level, they're the mid-management level, the leadership level, and they're at different cadences, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. I more talk on a quarterly basis with Bill, but there are other people in the organization that talk on a regular basis, right? And that way we identify opportunities. Nobody's surprised. When we do have a problem, everybody's aware of it so we can address it. I don't think that's, the challenge there is some of the daily meetings to review the metrics and the numbers, it actually is a little monotonous. I mean, to go through all the pages and pages of numbers that we have to go through, because DATAMARK has, I think, 31 different functions. I'm looking at Adela right now. I think they support 31 functions just in our area alone. So there are metrics for all of those functions that we cover on a regular basis. So I think you just have to have the discipline to conduct those reviews on a regular basis and have that communication channel open.
Very good. So from the trenches, anyone else have any kind of sharing or examples that they'd like to share?
Yeah,
I can
I'll
jump
chime
in.
in. Go ahead, Jerry.
You go. Oh, okay. So Herb's talking about, the different people that we work with, and Adela's in this role now. I remember back a couple of years ago when we were actually looking to outsource some additional functions so we could free up resources for other projects. And it was actually a point where I was working more with DATAMARK than I was some of my own peers. I remember 3 individuals that jump out, 3 great project leads, Mutu, Venkat, and Pisani. And it gets to the point where now, as we're doing our operational updates, I learn more about them and have, good peer-to-peer relationships with them over the last 3 years than, some of the people I work with at FedEx, just because of how well we interact.
Nice.
So yeah, just to chime in, another example too is we had a specific request. A customer wanted a specific invoicing handling. Basically, they had multiple account numbers, and when they got certain shipment detail came in, they wanted to assign a certain format. They wanted that account number assigned to that particular shipment, but our system was not allowing that. So we tried to do it manually. Couldn't do that because we were coming up with had some errors in that process. So we reached out to Naranjan and Pisani on coming up with a solution, and they came up with an automated solution, which they then demoed for us, and we went into production within 2 weeks, and it solved the customer's problem. And the good thing about that is they were able to write it in such a way that we were able to replicate that for some other customers. So it not only just solved that first issue, but it also is helping us out on some other issues as well.
I love that. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Dawn, if I could just chime in too as well. So I just wanted to kind of add to what Herb was saying with regards to, when we evaluate new business opportunities with FedEx. One of the things that I think is really important that we do is we bring in multiple team members to evaluate new processes. And so we'll bring folks from operations, software development, business engineering, and sometimes even IT to work together to evaluate a particular process that we've been asked to look at and really get into the details of it and figure out with FedEx, collaborating with them, what's the best way to outsource this, and should it be, divided up into different segments? Should only part of it be outsourced? What sort of recommendations do we have on what brings the best value to FedEx with outsourcing opportunities like that?
I like that. So obviously, Herb, and Bill, the success is also the people, right? I mean, you've got some amazing people that seem so friendly and open, and you guys are finishing each other's stories, which I love too. When we were talking yesterday about today's session, it seems like there's a secret to making this so successful. What would it be, Herb? How did you do this? And Bill, I'd love your input as well.
Well, I do think the success here, or the secret sauce, is about the relationship, though. We have the required meetings that we have to do, but we also have in-person meetings. Over the years before COVID, especially for the quarterly business reviews, we alternate. Sometimes DATAMARK comes to Memphis, which is our headquarters. Sometimes we would go to El Paso to meet with them. And, we've actually been to some of their locations in India for grand openings of operations and things of that nature. So, the people, you've had that face-to-face relationship. It's easy to pick up the phone and call them. Everybody has everybody's personal cell phone, So, and it's a 24/7 operation. So, and you know what? I think Adela can probably share a story here about when, COVID first hit us. That's a good example of that. Adela, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yes, definitely. So COVID-19 lockdown in India caught all of us off guard. So we thought we had a pretty good disaster recovery plan with 2 DATAMARK sites in India that are able to cover for each other, plus another facility in Mexico. But we were not prepared for this global event, obviously. So it took a great deal of collaboration and an enormous effort, primarily on the DATAMARK side, to procure equipment and secure home internet access for their agents in India. We worked on executing work from home amendments, and DATAMARK trained new resources in the locations not yet locked down. So it took DATAMARK about 2 weeks to get all agents working from home, and obviously there were backlogs of transactions. So my work day started and ended with talking to the DATAMARK's Director of India Operations, Satish Kumar. And anything we discussed on those calls was executed by the next day because, as Herb mentioned, they were running 24/7 operation. So we were constantly looking at various functions, defining priorities based on their time sensitivity and adjusting recovery plans. So during that time, like I said, DATAMARK worked around the clock and provided daily updates on the number of additional resources assigned to each function and the status of the backlog for every function. So this collaborative relationship we have with DATAMARK and their commitment to do whatever it takes were the key to coming out of that disaster with really minimum impact on our operations.
Wow, that tells a good story. So Herb, if I asked you then, so you talked a lot about the face-to-face in those meetings, do you still, through COVID, have you been able to keep the relationships as strong? Are you comfortable with that? And Bill, if it is, if you think it has, I'd love to know why you think it's working still.
Yeah, I think, a 31-year relationship, 1 year out of 31, that's not going to hurt the relationship, right? I mean, we all know each other. We talk regularly. If we weren't in this large audience here, I would be giving Bill a hard time, and he knows it, so I'll just save that for later. But I mean, we're really good friends in that regard. One thing Bill said that I think is understated is, and that DATAMARK does really well, is they try to find new opportunities within processes. I said we have 31 processes with them right now. I was just looking at the report this morning. We have 5 processes where they have brought to the table some process improvement ideas that we're evaluating. And I would say that's their strength. I mean, like I say, we deal with a lot of vendors, but that's the strength of DATAMARK. They seem to do that better than a lot of other vendors do. And I think because of that, and Bill, you'll have to speak to this, but I think that's how you have acquired business in other operating areas in FedEx. I mean, he only has part of their business with us. They have business in other areas with ground and freight and Latin America, even in the other regions, Latin America. I mean, you want to speak to that, Bill?
Absolutely. And two concepts that got brought up in that discussion there. The first one I want to touch on is, the purple promise, FedEx's promise, I will make every FedEx experience outstanding. That speaks to culture. And I think that the thing that secret sauce that makes it all work, what I've noticed over the last 30 years is where it works the best, where the partnership works the best, where you're really working together, is when the cultures are aligned. And in both cases, FedEx puts an extreme emphasis on customer satisfaction and on their employees. And we do the same thing. We put an extreme emphasis on over-delivering value and on taking care of our employees. And it really shows because happy employees deliver the best quality service. And so that combination works really well. And when you've got it on both sides of the contract, it's magical. That's where I think the secret sauce comes in. And, talking about the expansion, the investment in the opportunity that I talked about earlier, where it might look like a short-term loss, really what we're doing is we're sacrificing today by giving up improvement after improvement after improvement that could result in revenue loss for us. But what it does is it proves that we're in it for the long haul and we're looking out for you as much as we're looking out for us. And we get one of two reactions. Sometimes we get people that say, you should have done it earlier and do it again. But where the true partnerships come out is where people look at it and they go, wow, I need to introduce you to this other vice president or this other business unit, because if you can deliver this for them, I know that's what they need as well. And over the last 30 years, we've expanded to ground and freight and international and Latin America. And it's over 30 contracts now and probably 100 different processes. So like you said, it works.
I love that.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll add there, sorry to interrupt. The only other thing that I'll add there is the most fun for me is when we do the quarterly business reviews and I get to go to one of your locations and participate in the employee recognition program. That is a lot of fun because I don't get to see all the people all the time, and that is the highlight of that's the highlight of the relationship, Bill. I hate to tell you.
Well, it's better than meeting with me, I'm sure, but they would much rather you give them an award than me. So that's another place where it really benefits everybody.
Well, that's got to feel so good for the employees to be given an award by one of their customers in front of other employees. So I love that you do that. But Herb, if we have people on joining us today, they're considering outsourcing, perhaps for the first time, because not everybody has done this yet. Is there any particular advice that you want to offer to people when you're looking at companies?
Yeah, I would just repeat what I said earlier is first, you really need to know your function really well and then have the metrics and the SOPs and your expectations, know what your expectations are. And then as you go through the process of RFPs or discussing, outsourcing the work with vendors, you need to ascertain if they really understand the work that you're doing. I mean, if they're leading the conversation, I know this is going to offend a lot of people, but if they're leading the conversation with, hey, I can save you 10, 15, 20%, 30%, those are not the right people to talk to. The people you need to be talking to are the people that engage with you about the function itself, because they have no way of knowing how much they can save you till they actually understand the work that you do.
Exactly. So know your own work, but now, so Herb, I'm going to ask you sort of a curveball. What if I have a function that I know is not best in class? And do I clean it up first? So I have my standard operating procedures down and I have my metrics, or have you ever outsourced something that wasn't perfect to DATAMARK and just said, here, it's a mess, you guys fix it and make it better?
No, I don't do that. I think, sorry, I think you discover that it's not best in class when you engage in that conversation with the vendors. Then you discover, hey, the metrics that I have, the SOPs that I have, those are not the best. And the vendor that you're in discussion with, they will immediately recognize where you can improve those processes, right? So if we take something to DATAMARK or any other vendor and we say, here's the SOP for this function, here are the metrics, and it is a function that they have more expertise in than we do, they can immediately tell you in that discussion that, hey, our turnaround time is going to be faster, here's how we do it. We take this offline instead of doing it, online with a customer conversation. So you'll know right away in that discussion or that interview process with the vendors if they can really do it better than you, if they're best in class, or if there's an opportunity for you to improve the process together.
Okay. So Jerry, do you have any advice that you'd offer from the trenches?
Well, just to kind of echo what Herb was talking about, because we've went through this multiple times, is don't take any shortcuts. We definitely always want to understand, document, and then put the controls in place for us to be able to actually give something to the vendor that's has a best-in-class kind of structure. We've encountered situations like that just recently. I have a function that we started talking to DATAMARK maybe a year and a half ago. about outsourcing, but it just wasn't there. We had some system issues, some Band-Aids and some short-term fixes in place that we just didn't feel comfortable with outsourcing that yet. We continued those discussions, got everything in place and, running well internally, and then we outsourced it here, I guess it would have been January, and it's been doing awesome. So rather than, giving something to a vendor that wasn't necessarily ready to go and having that growing pain, we gave something over that was, running smoothly. We had great controls in place. Our team was doing a great job. And then we were able to free up those resources to do something else. And, DataMark's been doing well with the function. So
that's great. Adela, any advice that you would give the audience?
Yeah, just to echo previous comments, I would say know your process really well, break it into specific functions with homogeneous transactions, right? And define expected turnaround time or maximum acceptable backlog for each of those functions. Have good reporting to measure your expectations. And it may be a good idea to set your pricing at that level as well. So it will make it easy for your vendor to understand and meet your expectations. And honestly, it will make it easier for you to evaluate and pay for that work because you know exactly what you are paying and the vendor knows exactly what you are expecting.
Good advice. How about you, James?
Well, it's basically what the others have said so far. I think the expectations piece is the key on this, to make sure it's clear to the vendor, because one of the things that we've seen also is not only at the, as Adela mentioned, the contract level, you need to make sure that the team that's actually supporting you understands that. So we've had daily discussions with Vijay and Muthu a lot with their respective teams and making sure they understand what we're expecting from them as well. So it's not only at a higher level, but make sure that you have that good understanding, good dynamic, I guess, relationship with the individual. So at times you have obstacles and you may have to pivot very quickly and make sure that everyone understands what the goals are. So I would say open communication, make sure the expectations are clear.
I like that. So Matt, let's go back in time. I don't mean to have you just sit there and listen, but you should feel so proud because you were back there at the beginning. So can you tell us a little bit about the early years?
Sure. So one of the things that I think we learned early on as an organization working with FedEx was the value add. And for example, back in '94, we were one of 7 vendors who were processing air bills for FedEx. I think they had something like 1.2 million air bills per day that they had outsourced to vendors. And we were one of 7 who were processing them from paper. And in '94, FedEx came up with an imaging system that they developed and rolled out. And as part of that rollout, all of their vendors had to develop workflow applications to be able to handle the images as they migrated away from paper. And once that system was rolled out, there were a lot of enhancements that needed to happen after that. And one of the things that we learned early on after that transition was the importance of understanding all of the specs. There were a lot of specs. Herb, I don't know if you remember all this, but there were a lot of system specs and business requirements. The manual was probably about this thick. And we became experts on it pretty quickly. And suddenly FedEx started coming to us and asking for recommendations from DataMark on how they should make adjustments to those specs to be able to improve quality, to be able to improve turnaround time. And we ended up helping them for many years after the rollout of that system, update their specs, review them, update them, and approve them basically before they turned around to their other vendors and said, okay, here's changes that you all are going to need to make. And I think it's very important that that for us that we learned from that value add that we were bringing to them, because very quickly after that, they started coming to us with new business opportunities for us to look at because they saw the value that we brought to the relationship.
Okay, but before we go on, Matt, for people that can't or weren't in the business world 30 years ago, so right around 1990, we had desktop computers we had fax machines, we had printers, we had some decent internet capabilities. But did you really say that you took paper air bills to create paper invoices?
Yes. So back in 1990, all the way up until about 94, everything was paper based, and so every morning FedEx would fly the paper to El Paso from Memphis, and we would pick it up. And initially it was one particular kind of document that was all paper. It came in these large trays. There was probably 6 or 7 of them, and it took about 60 people to process that. And then as we added the air bills to that process, it became about 600 pounds of paper that we were picking up in addition to those manifest documents.
So you were flying paper in.
I'm sorry?
They flew the paper documents to you each day.
Yes, it arrived at the FedEx station in El Paso. We would pick it up about 6:15 or 6:30 in the morning. We would take all this paper to our office. We would log it and get it ready for all of the keyers, and then they would all clock in and they'd start working. We had people that were dedicated to moving the paper around the office, handing it out to the folks that were doing the data capture. They would pick it up, and we would make sure that we reconciled it all. And it all had to be delivered back to FedEx by about 6:30 or 6:45 in the evening, that physical paper. And then the data that we had captured was all transmitted into FedEx's system through old modem lines.
Oh my God. So I'm sure we have some people going, shh. I mean, that's why I was starting to like, oh my God, that was a whole nother world when you guys started out. So,
Yes.
So Bill, I mean, you have only 28 years of experience here. So you are the youngster on this account, but that is a tremendous journey that the company has had to go through to go from all paper, being flown in, being flown back, to completely digital today. So share a little bit about that and maybe how you experienced it.
That was one process that was ripe for improvement, wasn't it, Matt?
Yes, it was.
I'll kind of share a different aspect of the business. One day Herb called me and said, "Hey, Bill, I think you ought to be in Mexico." And so we went to Mexico. Herb and I went to Mexico. We visited a whole bunch of sites in Mexico. He ended up opening a site in Mexico, and we weren't in Mexico before and ended up expanding into Mexico. And that was probably mid 90s. And then around 2000, Herb said, "You know what? You ought to be in India."
You go, Herb.
I went to India. I've actually got a really good Polaroid of Herb riding a camel. Awesome picture.
Bill, you don't want to start this now. I have pictures too.
Show the picture now.
What happens in India stays in India, gentlemen.
Oh, there you go. All right. I'll talk about it there, but I'll say this. So one of the benefits, I said earlier that our strategy is to really partner with customers that we can grow with. And one of the benefits is that, they continue, as they see things happening at their level, they share that with us and push us into the direction where industry is going. And so we've gotten a lot of insight from the security standpoint, from the voice process, and just tons of insight that we've been able to leverage and kind of stay ahead, so that they're pushing us into areas well before they're mainstream for us to move into them.
So talk about that then, if you could share, because you've gone on and expanded to FedEx Ground in other areas, you've gone international with them. So is it the strength of the initial relationship that drove that, or do you think it was your team? And folks, by the way, pause for one quick second. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If there's a question that is burning that you want me to get in front of these folks, throw it into the Q&A, and I'll make sure to glance at that occasionally and ask those questions as well. Otherwise, I'm having such a good time, I'm just going to keep asking questions, but you're welcome to add more. So back to you, Bill, about going international. How did you expand your footprint so much?
So Herb mentioned the quarterly business reviews that we do, and what we've done for decades is once a quarter, we all get together and either they'll come here or we'll go there. When I say they'll come here, sometimes we go to India, sometimes we go to Mexico, sometimes El Paso. We kind of rotate it around so they can see all the different people. It also gives them the opportunity to see all the processes that we're doing for other customers. That gives them ideas of additional things that we could be doing for them. Herb said that he really enjoys coming to visit our sites because he gets to meet the people and see the other processes that we're doing. The flip side of that is that when we go to FedEx, going to Memphis, they'll invite, different managing directors and vice presidents from within their own company or from sister companies. That spawned us going to Pittsburgh to meet with FedEx Ground and Miami for Latin America. And Herb's been nice enough to introduce us to all these different people. And those meetings usually turn into broader discussions about the future of FedEx and where they're going, what their current challenges are, where they want to expand. Gives us tremendous insight into what they see coming on the horizon, which leads to us opening new sites, exploring new technologies, partnering with different companies. That's kind of really, those quarterly business reviews really help drive a lot of the future opportunities that come out both ways. And it's been very beneficial.
And so it sounds like it happens almost organically as well. I mean, you're just out there having a conversation, you're meeting people, you're seeing things. So are you guys that open with each other that everyone can see in each other's business and help out in all kinds of ways?
I'll let you answer that one, Herb.
Yeah, I think so. The other thing I would add to what Bill said about the quarterly business reviews is, I have introduced DATAMARK to a lot of other business partners within FedEx, but at the end of the day, Bill and Matt and Nina and Caesar and all those people, they have to win the business. And so, they obviously have brought something to the table to these other business owners within FedEx. Otherwise, they wouldn't be using them. So.
Yeah, but then you also emphasize a lot about relationship building and longevity, Bill. So is that what really shows, but you still have to have SLAs, terms and conditions, you still have to perform. So.
Well, so our average contract length is 15 years.
Seriously?
Yeah, across all of our different customers. And so what I would say that speaks to is the SLA, you have to meet the SLAs. I mean, that's just kind of the entry point. If you don't meet the SLAs, the contract terms up when the contract terms up. You're 3 and done or 5 and done or whatever the term is there. But our focus is looking beyond the contract. We're looking for opportunities to create value and prove our value so that we can enjoy the relationship for a long time. I had a banking customer of ours here just recently tell me that the average cost to do an RFP was $1 million for them. And that's probably different in different industries. But, if you equate that just to this relationship alone, not having to do, 10 RFPs, just the money that you save by not having to, reinvent the wheel because somebody's not even meeting the SLAs is just really kind of the tip of the iceberg, because where the value really comes in is the continuous improvement that gets driven. And these guys have mentioned a lot of different people over in India, and VJ, which Herb talked about earlier. We sent him to FedEx Ground, and he brought a lot of his knowledge about all the internal tools and systems that FedEx domestic used. And we were able to translate that into benefits that Ground could see that they weren't even aware of yet. But because we had 20 years of experience with the systems, it was, we had, in that particular instance, we had more inside knowledge about how their systems work than potentially the people that we were dealing with. So the benefits just keep rolling into the future.
That's great. So obviously no one was ready for a pandemic. And Adele, you mentioned, that it was earth-shattering, eye-opening. But can you guys share a little bit about the last 18 months? Because you went from such a collegial face-to-face, quarterly, weekly, all kinds of meetings into something that is not as unified and in person. Can you share your 18 months?
I'll jump in here.
Jerry.
So this is kind of interesting. Yeah, Adela talked about, it was a huge surprise, COVID-19. So not only for our internal teams, but our relationship with DATAMARK. But honestly, outside of the first, 2 to 3 week window where everyone was transitioning from, in the office to work from home type setup, we were well positioned with DATAMARK to be able to handle it because us in the operation and the folks that support us in India, we already had a virtual relationship. So whether it was GoToMeetings, WebEx, scheduling early morning calls to accommodate the different times, we had already had such a good foundation to be able to handle this new environment. Yes, we miss seeing everyone, every quarter in person, but from an operational perspective, we're still able to support our customers and get our work done. And, like everyone keeps talking about the relationship between the vendor and, FedEx. Well, you also have to have good relationships internally. So like James and I could focus on our operation while Adela was, working with DATAMARK, 24/7 to get everybody back online. So that internal team dynamic helped a lot as well.
Right. And having gone through this process once, right? So we now have a very flexible setting where DATAMARK can switch to working from home, basically with no impact on our operations. And that came handy when India had the second lockdown, right? So they had to switch to the working from home setting once again this year. And they haven't, I guess, skipped a bit, right? I mean, there were no impacts on the operational side because they were just so prepared to do that at a very short notice.
So just a question, have you guys seen each other in person now since COVID yet?
No, only through Zoom.
Can I be invited to that first reunion? I want to witness it. It's going to be a love fest like I have never seen before. So when is it? When are you guys getting together?
I don't think we have a date yet, but I'm hoping in the fall we can get back together and have the quarterly business review process again. That would be great.
I can't wait for it for you. I feel the yearning that there are hugs and sitting in these screens that need to be given to one another and high fives and we made it and wow, isn't this incredible? So I'm excited for you guys to be able to get back in person as well. Have your reunion at one of the SIG events. Then we can all be there with you. That would be awesome. I would love that. So Bill, challenging times from DATAMARK. You had to move heaven and earth. You had to get 3,000 people. Not only did you have to get them to be able to work remotely, you had to make sure they were safe, that they had safety, that they had their health. Now you're dealing with inoculations and vaccines and bringing people back. Tell me, how did you keep this morale and the culture for this past 18 months?
Well, first I would say that God protected us. We grew through COVID. We probably added 700 people through COVID. So the relationship and the strong leadership that we had in all of the sites beforehand made it easy. All these guys have been talking about the relationship that we've enjoyed with each other for the last 30 years. Well, the same is true internally. We've got great folks running all of our sites. Prior to COVID, we had 5 people working remotely.
5.
And a month later, we had 2,700 people working remotely. So it was quite a heavy lift. There was a lot of 24-hour days, bought a lot of laptops, bought a lot of internet services. And we were just so focused on balancing, giving the customers what they needed, because in a lot of cases, they're very dependent on our ability to get back up, and at the same time, the safety of the employees. And our site leaders really did a stand-up job of planning ahead to get buses and laptops and all that sort of stuff, really moved mountains to make it happen. And the results are stellar. Like Adela said, we went through 2 lockdowns in India. So the first one was announced 24 hours before it happened. The second one we were completely ready for. We actually had everybody working at home before they sent everybody home because we knew it was coming, or had a pretty good idea it was coming. But the guys did it. We're blessed with a really good team that really does a good job of balancing customer and employee, and they took care of both.
And how about you, Herb, for the same thing? It's got to have been a challenge.
Yeah, it has been a challenge, but, special shout out to some of the site leaders like Victor and Satish and Caesar. We had a business continuity plan, essentially, that we could move work around in the India sites. But, when COVID came along, we actually moved work to Mexico, which is Victor's team and Caesar's team and Raul. That was a new challenge, and they pulled it off seamlessly. So it was great.
Wow. So we have folks on this that are here for this Power Hour, Fortune 500 companies like you. So I would love some parting advice. Anything that any of you want to share as a way that, they can't be part of your team, but could they do this themselves? Do you have faith? Obviously, DATAMARK, you're going to be around to serve other people as well. And I tell you, Bill, you don't even need a marketing organization. You just need FedEx. That's all you need. And they tell your story so well. No offense, Tom, because I know you're listening and you are marketing, but boy, do they make you guys look good. And I know that you do a lot to deserve that. But going forward, parting advice.
You want me to go first, Herb, or you got it?
I'll go first, and then you can correct me.
Now you're like an old married couple.
Almost. But you made a comment that FedEx makes DATAMARK look good. Well, DATAMARK makes FedEx look good too. I mean, they bring a lot to the table, a lot of insight. Sometimes when you're in a company and you're meeting with different organizations in your company, you get kind of a myopic view. It's really good to have a partner, someone you've been working with a long time that kind of knows your business, and you can go and say, we're thinking about this, and they can, give you some feedback and either tell you you're crazy, which Bill does frequently, or they can tell you you're on track, which is what Matt's role is. So it's good to have someone you can go to in a relationship like that.
That's awesome. And I would add to that it is possible to have long-term excellent relationships. And if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. And if you're just looking for the cheapest price, you're not going to find it. And if you're like myopically looking at low price and high quality, you can maybe turn it into that. But like we've talked about all along, really the secret sauce is looking for somebody that's really focused on providing value long-term and has the history to back it up. The average of 15 years obviously makes a difference. And if you're looking for partners that will be able to provide for the long term, I think you can find it.
I love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, and I am so bummed because I could sit here and just enjoy the rest of my day with you. So folks, if you want any follow-on information, we do have Tom Mead's information on the screen. We will send a copy of today's presentation, and the recording out to you tomorrow. I know we didn't get to any of your questions, so reach out to Tom. He'll make sure to get all your questions answered. And to FedEx and DATAMARK, I just want to congratulate you on 31 years of excellence. And I've so enjoyed getting to know both of your teams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawn.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And tune in again for our Power Hours. This is a place to get educated from your desktop and hear world-class stories like this. So we will see you online very soon again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.